All right, all three streams are looking solid. I haven't gone live on. We are currently live on the Ops Lens stream. So, but Facebook and YouTube are not yet live.
Paul, I have a different. Is that air conditioning too loud? Should I shut it off?
No, you're fine, bud.
Okay.
See, your mic should be good, Joe. But...
Four minutes to live.
Okay. And this is my wife, Johanna.
Hey, Johanna.
Hi.
Johanna, can you give me a 5 count, please?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Is there any way you can boost your audio level?
Yes. Hold on a second.
Oh yeah, open the blue, then because I put it on your computer, the gain's probably lower.
So your name's pronounced Johanna? Johanna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I am getting an echo.
Correctly.
I mean, no, I can always lower mine. I'm louder than she is.
Okay, I just increased my gain.
Need a little more. You're still very low.
How's that?
Let me try doing it on my end. Just a minute.
Yeah, she sounded good on my end.
Because the more you increase it, the more echo I get. Okay, give me a 5 count, will you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good, 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 good.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, 3 minutes to live.
So you usually open with an introductory segment, and then you bring us in after your first. Okay.
You're at 15 after is approximately when you guys come in. And then we'll do one interview segment, break, second interview segment, break, and you can bail after the second interview segment, or you, like I said, you want to hang out the whole broadcast and contribute. That's cool. That's fine. If you want to bail, that's cool too. So
sounds good.
Do we have an open ready to fly, guys? On my folks, have we scripted that out?
It looks John
Dana.
It looks like we do.
Dana, we need
oh no, we don't.
Yeah.
Dana needs.
One minute to live. All right, 15 seconds. I'm going to start the stream. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Polite Society podcast. We're live. We're going to be recording here in just a second, episode 557. I'm going to go ahead and bring my crew in here. We're just off of AmCon. I just finished up AmCon on Saturday. Took yesterday off and probably shouldn't. But anyway, we've got a really interesting interview tonight, and I'm sorry I do not have the name of the show up in front of me. Locked and Loaded Latinos, I believe, is the name of the podcast. So, but we're going to be going to that as when we get to our personal news segment. After we get to our personal news segment, and if my team is ready to fly, other than Dana just got up and walked away from his computer.
I had to shut the window.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to kick off a show, guys? All right. Intro music coming. Well,
Yes.
Show intro coming in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one on Monday, September the 14th, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Amy Dillon, and on tonight's show, we will talk with Johanna Rosalie and Rolo de la Vega about their efforts to highlight gun ownership in the Hispanic community.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the ambush of 2 LA Sheriff's deputies.
I'm Dana Lufer, and in one of our DGUs, we talk about strangers breaking windows.
I'm Gary Doherty, and in another DGU, we talk about warning shots. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 557 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and we're back. This is Monday. We just finished up a AmCon over the weekend, and so this will release on Podcast Tuesday, but thank you for joining us as we record this live on Monday. Rob is gone. He got electricity back after the hurricane. However, he doesn't have internet back yet, and oh, by the way, there's another one coming, meaning another hurricane. Amanda has got some things she's taking care of with some veterans and some things she does there. Robin is doing some teaching, so they're not here. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to John. What's been up with you since the last time we recorded, man?
Well, I got my tree stand up over the Labor Day weekend and finished the platform for my ground blind. I sighted at my crossbow this past weekend, and now I just need the deer to cooperate. Sorry I missed the last show, but I was playing with my granddaughters.
Oh, that's
in my classes in hunting and shooting sports management, I have learned more about the restrictions of the Gun Control Act of '68 than I ever wanted.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we get questions about all different stuff about the federal firearms regulations, and that's our homework. So I'll pass it on to Gary. How are things out in Chicago?
Yeah, I bet a blog's coming soon on that, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
If I have time.
So, yeah, just a lot of training. I just want to interject that if you are a new gun owner and you're planning on taking a class right away, take the class before you run off and buy a gun. A good instructor will have guns to loan you during the class and discuss purchasing. I take my students, if they wish, to the gun store and actually go shopping with them to help them try out a bunch of different guns. And of course, rent them. Try and shoot them before you can. Shoot them before you buy them. This has happened a couple of times. Yeah, people just buying the wrong guns. So, if you can, try and hold off on that energy to buy something. Amy?
Well, I attended AmCon, virtually. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I attended the virtual conf weekend. Some shooting. I trained did some training for the upcoming DC Project Team match, which I just want to let our listeners know it is a charity 3-gun match. It's happening Halloween weekend in Burnett, Texas. But that's about it. Just attended the conference and did a lot of shooting. Not a bad weekend. Dana, what's going on with you?
Well, I was supposed to be in a secret, undisclosed location this week, but we had to postpone our reservations, our flights. I've been told I'm negative, and I got the test results this morning to prove it. We had to go and get tested for coronavirus, and the test results came back after 15 minutes and came back negative. So both of us were exposed last week, which was why we couldn't fly to Denver on Saturday for visit with our granddaughter. So, and other than that, I carried every day this week. Paul, have you recovered from ANCOM yet?
No, I haven't. But wow, what a conference! When we got the word back in July that I got word on July 4th weekend that that AmCon and GRPC were going to be virtual, that the hotel in Orlando was not going to be able to accommodate us. It hurt my heart. I really enjoy getting FaceTime, being able to shake hands and talk with my friends, and that wasn't going to happen this year, and that hurt my heart a bit. But when we came to do the virtual conference, first of all, I've got to thank the good folks at U.S. Law Shield and the great people at Second Amendment Foundation for sponsoring AmCon, because we upgraded software big time. We upgraded hardware big time. We did a lot of things to pull this off, and I think AmCon went off just beautifully. Amanda Suffolcool and Cheryl Todd helped me with the MC duties. Susan was working in the background all day long, and a good friend of the show and great person, Sarah Kate Haltman, was helping me with doing the setup and the microphone checks and visual checks with everybody. And just what I was really scared was going to be a flop was a surprisingly it was bigger and better than I ever could have hoped, and I really had a great time. It was exhausting. I was up from about 2:00 in the morning on Saturday morning, starting to get the final push going. We went live at 9:00 Central Time Saturday morning, and we wrapped at about 5:30 when we were planning to wrap at 5. We actually were able to get Alan Gottlieb from the Second Amendment Foundation to come in and do a keynote talk for us. And just, despite a few technical issues, everything went off fantastically well. I couldn't have been more happy, and the only thing that could have went better is if we could have met in person. That's the only thing that could have been any better about that. Other than that, I am home for the week. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of work with the SAF for GRPC. And so I'm home for the whole week. I do not leave out on the road again until 1 week from tomorrow. And thank you to Dakota Carriers for paying me to stay home. I'm using vacation time for this. So that's kind of what's been up with me. Training, Gary, I know you've got to have training up and scheduled, and I know you're looking for more people to do training.
I'm always open to more people that want training. I think it's a great idea. I've been so busy between politics and private classes that I haven't actually been able to put something scheduled on my website. It's an email. Still, same discount applies. Mention the podcast, 10% off. Whatever you need. I do one-on-ones or group trainings for concealed carry permits, whatever. And whatever you need, reach out to us, and we'll be there for you.
Very cool. Anybody else have any training they want to plug? Amy, I know you want to plug the thing the Texas shoot that you've got coming up for the DC project,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's it's the week. It's a Halloween. It's a costume match. So people there's going to be cash prizes, and I believe when I don't know. I think the 31st and the 1st, or it's either way. It falls on that Saturday and Sunday. So that's in Burnett, Texas, at the Reveille Peak Ranch. And if there's anyone who needs more info on that, it's at dcproject.info. And you don't, it is a team match. And if you're having trouble finding someone to shoot with you, let us know on our Facebook page, and we'll match up people that can't find a partner to come.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Well, I do want to, before we head off to break, I want to check out the other shows on the Self-Defense Radio Network. For those of you catching us live, you can see it on your screen right now. The website, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. We, of course, are there. Self-Defense Gun Stories, Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, Eye on the Target Radio, Gun Freedom Radio, Riding Shotgun with 12 really great shows, with one more going to be coming on real soon as they go live with the season 2 of their show. We're going to be joined on that website by the good folks at Guns Guide to Liberals. Go ahead and check them out. Check us out at the website. You can listen to or subscribe to any of the shows right off our website. For right now, we're going to step aside. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we've got our guests, and again, that's the. I'm very sorry. My brain is not working. I don't have the show notes up in the right place, but it's the Locked and Loaded Latinos podcast. We're going to be talking to those folks right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Massad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
America is under attack, and we need you to take action now. Our history, culture, constitution, and the American way of life are being assaulted. Violent anarchists are rioting and looting in cities across the country. They are demanding the defunding of our police and an end to law and order. There has never been a more critical time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment Foundation created the Second Amendment First Responders Program. This program seeks to actively engage Americans who want to protect our Second Amendment rights. Please text PROTECT 2A to 474747 and become a Second Amendment first responder. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Again, text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747.
Hey, and welcome back. This is the interview portion of the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand this over to Amy. She set up the interview, and I'm looking over at show notes, and holy cow, she got some information up there. So, Amy, I'm going to hand this over to you, and I'm going to pull it away from you in about 15 minutes when we go back to break.
All right. Well, I'm really excited to talk to two of the people I've actually I never met them in person. I don't think I know we were all at the same rally last year. Since then, I've just been following their journey into Second Amendment advocacy, and I thought it was really exciting to bring on the show tonight. So, a little bit more about our guests, and they are a husband and wife, and we get a little bit of an extra because we have two for one, But Johanna Rosalie, Latina Locked and Loaded, is a grassroots advocate for the Second Amendment. Although she has been a firearms enthusiast for almost a decade, she decided to join her voice to preserve the right to bear arms after the Parkland shooting in South Florida. She adopted the social media Locked and Loaded in 2018 after attending and being inspired by the Second Amendment rally in Washington, D.C. American media often aligned her culture with anti-gun sentiment. This is on destigmatizing both the female and Hispanic communities. We're also joined by Rolando Rolo de la Vega, or he's also known by his social media handle, the Puerto Rican Pistolero. He's an IT professional and aspiring Second Amendment advocate living in South Florida.
Amy,
there's a
Amy?
lot more in the bio that talks about their kind of journey into Second Amendment. So I kind of want to stop looking over the bio and reading all my notes. Yes.
Amy, I'm going to have you are breaking up. I'm going to have you kill your video and just stay on audio.
Okay.
That's better. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, where did I last leave off? It's fine.
Just if you would re-rack from the beginning.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm so excited to bring on tonight's guests. And really, the three of us, I don't know if we've ever met in person, but I know we were all at the Second Amendment rally last year. But since then, I've been kind of following their journey into Second Amendment advocacy. So I'm really excited to bring their perspective on our show tonight. So the first guest, Johanna, well, they're a husband and wife team. So I think it's really cool that we're getting, a husband and wife team as guests here. But let's talk about Johanna Rosalie. She's also known as Latina Locked and Loaded. She's a grassroots advocate for the Second Amendment. Although she has been a firearms enthusiast for almost a decade, she decided to join her voice in the fight to preserve the right to bear arms after the Parkland shooting in South Florida. She adopted her social media moniker, Latina Locked and Loaded, in November 2019 after attending and being inspired by the Second Amendment rally in Washington, D.C. Realizing that Latino American media often aligned her culture with anti-gun sentiment, she focuses on destigmatizing gun ownership in both the female and Hispanic communities. Her husband, Rolando de la Vega, who's also known by his social media handle, the Puerto Rican Pistolero, is an IT professional and aspiring Second Amendment advocate living in South Florida. And there's a lot more that I can get into when I'm reading their bios about how they got into Second Amendment advocacy, but I'd like to hear it from their point of view. So I'm going to wait until I ask them that. But I do want to mention that they are also co-hosts of the Locked and Loaded Latinos podcast. Both of them have become concealed carry permit holders. They've attended national, state, and local 2A advocacy events, and they do have the ultimate goal to educate young Americans on the importance of defending their rights from government overreach, specifically within the Hispanic American community. So I'd like to go ahead and just welcome both of you on the show. Thank you for being able to come on at such a short notice. Let's start with you, Rollo, because like I said, there's a lot in your bio about how you got into advocacy. Can you expand on what you told me prior to the show about how you got involved in the Second Amendment and advocating for it?
Definitely. And thank you again for having us on. Like I said, we got started pretty much, I got started in advocacy probably a little bit just before Joe did, but I owned firearms pretty much since I was legally able to own a handgun in South Florida. So really who inspired me first of all is I grew up in pretty much in the 9/11 generation. So I was a freshman in high school when the September 11th attacks happened, and a lot of my older friends, my father was retired military, and a lot of my friends that were older at the time that were seniors in 2001 joined up in the Marine Corps. When they came back, they're the ones who taught me how to shoot, instilled kind of the what the Second Amendment was and what it meant, and pretty much brought me into the shooting sports and recreational shooting and the importance of self-defense. I'd say that back then I was like most gun owners, that I felt that I had the right to own a firearm, but I wasn't necessarily an advocate for my rights. I definitely, like a lot of people, probably took them for granted. It was just one of those things where I always was brought in. So I had a very positive experience with firearms exposure. So sometimes when that happens, despite living in an area that's not necessarily so gun friendly, I didn't really see too much negativity until the Park Police saw that regardless of political party, your rights can be taken away from you at any moment, because we had a full Republican governor, Republican legislature here, and somehow red flag laws were still passed fairly quickly and in a panic here. So that really just brought into my eyes that there's something that I need to do, and that's when I really started becoming more of a firearms enthusiast rather than just a recreational shooter. And then Joe can kind of elaborate from there, because we've been together for about 10 years, but she didn't really get into it until after Parkland.
Yeah, and I was reading that Joe, you were actually at an outdoor playground near the school, the Parkland school, when that happened. Is that correct?
Yes. It was actually interesting to me that, I was talking about this on our last podcast, that a lot of people get very upset at new gun owners not immediately being Second Amendment advocates, or being, totally wanting, everything from the smallest handgun or revolver to machine guns to be legal. And I was saying that it's definitely a progression for some people. I did not grow up shooting. I did not grow up pro-gun. My parents and my family are staunchly anti-gun. And I always had a curiosity about it. I always wanted to try it. And when I started dating Rolando almost a decade ago, he casually mentioned that he owned a firearm, and I was very enthusiastic about wanting to try it out. And I believe the very same day I shot his firearm, I immediately went and bought my first. And it was definitely a progression. I remember the day of the Parkland shooting, I was outdoors at a playground in Parkland. I was with my 2-year-old niece. My family members were at a physician's appointment nearby, and I had decided to take my niece, out of their hair and go to a playground that was just a short while from the high school. And I was very respectful of my family's anti-gun sentiment, especially around their children. They told me they didn't want me carrying around their kids, and I listened then. So it was very chilling to hear afterwards when we were driving home what had happened that same morning. Very short, I will never be that understanding of their anti-gun sentiment. I felt like I had let my niece down. Had something happened, I wouldn't have been able to protect her. So from that moment on, I had decided I would always carry, and I became much more enthusiastic about self-defense and always being ready for anything.
So when, if I remember, I can't remember when exactly the Parkland shooting happened. What year was that?
2017 or 18. It was Valentine's Day. I remember February.
Yes.
I want to say it's 2017. So I was a concealed
in the last, yeah.
Yeah, very recent. 2018. So it was very recent. I was very enthusiastic about guns, but I had my concealed carry, but I just wasn't where I am now in terms of my belief in always being ready, always being prepared. And I think that's really what woke me up. And then from that moment forward, especially like Rolando was saying, once the aftermath of the shooting happened and our Second Amendment rights suddenly seemed like it was very easy to lose. That's when we became very serious about advocacy and, protecting our Second Amendment right.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because we've talked about kind of your journey as individuals getting into firearm ownership, but then there was that point in your life, and that was the Parkland shooting, where it went from enthusiasm to, oh, this is something that I must protect, and this is why it's so important. But I want to say, in the last year, what was the turning point for when you both decided to be outspoken about it into what you're doing now? Because I think what you're doing now is much needed from just any gun owner, and I think that's been a hot topic in the the Second Amendment community. Is every gun owner should be a gun advocate. So let's talk about the transition of when you realized that point in your journey together.
I can definitely say that the first thing that really happened is that for a long time, Johanna and I were both off of social media. We'd kind of written off. I mean, we see the things that go on nowadays with the conflicts on social media, cancel culture, and things like that. Obviously, that's really ramped up in the last, I would say, 1 to 2 years. But even before that, we kind of got tired of the social media scene, especially when you get anything not even politically controversial. It seems that anything could be controversial nowadays if it doesn't follow a certain viewpoint. So we kind of wrote off social media for a few years, and we had a good time with that, kind of being disengaged. We were always up to date with current events and everything that was going on, so we weren't politically disengaged. We were just disengaged on social media. And then Johanna, kind of on a whim, decided to join Instagram around the beginning of 2019. And she started following different gun advocacy pages. I had always been and watching a lot of content creators on YouTube. So especially early on, Coleon Noir was kind of a big inspiration as, somebody else that's a minority figure that wasn't really a gun owner. He came from a legal background. So I come from a professional, my degree's in engineering and I'm in IT. So it was cool to see kind of somebody from that wasn't raised in guns and, became an advocate and a spokesperson for the Second Amendment. And so as Jo got more involved on social media, she had a few accounts that she followed, and she said, there seems to be a really awesome Second Amendment community on Instagram, and I think you should try it out. It doesn't seem like it's as, things aren't as toxic as Facebook or Twitter. So maybe you should set up an IG account. And we started following a few different accounts there. I think one of the first ones that kind of, I guess we could say we caught their attention and that we were active in their account was Carrie Sloan with We the Female. So, she would do a lot of lives with Kevin Dixie and Argo J. And so I used to jump in and start commenting, and they kind of said, hey, using your voice on this platform to get into advocacy. So I started Puerto Rican Pistolero around that time. I want to say that it was in August of 2019. I'd been using my personal account then. And then, I found out about GRPC through Carrie and Argo J at the time. And I really wanted to go, but it was pretty much like a week before the event. So that wasn't something that we could swing at the time. But, they told us about the Second Amendment rally. We found out about it. And I said, as soon as registration for this occurs, I'm going to go for it. And I remember that as soon as I believe that Rob Pincus created the page, I signed up for it right away, and I got a DM from him, and he said, "Dude, you're the first person to say that you were interested in this and to show that you bought tickets to Washington, D.C." And so Carrie, Cheryl Todd, Kevin Dixie, Rebecca Schmoy, Timothy Knight, and Tony Simon all had a breakfast that they were having for advocates before the Second Amendment rally. So, they invited us to join. I said, hey, I want to bring my wife. And Johanna was kind of like, I 100% support this, but she was kind of along for the ride at the time and supporting me. And we went there, and it was a great experience. I'll let Joe kind of share that, because I know I was kind of already invested at that time. It was just kind of great to meet some of, I guess, the heroes that in advocacy that we had been inspired by. And I knew them, but I think it really made an even bigger impact on Joe.
Before we get into that, and I promise I'll come right back after break. We'll get right into that, but we are coming up on break. I want to go ahead and step aside here quick, and we will be right back right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, we are back, and as promised, I'm going to go ahead and just throw straight to you, Johanna, because that there was your husband was setting you up, and I absolutely want you to get to that. And when you finish, John, I didn't miss it. You do have a question for him, and I want to get to that too. But Johanna, we're going to go straight to you first.
So we were talking about the Second Amendment advocacy breakfast that was the morning of the first Second Amendment rally in Washington, D.C. And it was basically it was a couple other people who were also up and coming possible advocates or who had showed interest in doing advocacy. Our friend Sincere Hogan was there, and Martin from Firearm Chronicles, yes. He was there as well. And it was really inspirational, just getting to hear the stories from Cheryl and Carrie and Kevin. Kevin in particular is really good at just kind of mentoring people and putting you on the spot about things, like making you think about things. So at the time, I was trying to be the woman behind the man, because I really am, believe it or not, an introvert. Some people, John Crump refuses to believe that I'm an introvert. He says that I'm actually an extrovert, but it's not true. So at the time, I actually sat at the breakfast when they went around the table and they asked us what our plans were, what our goals were, what we were expecting after we had listened to their stories. And I just said, no, I'm just, I will be a supportive wife and kind of work around in the background. And I remember getting a little bit of, but why, from people like Harry and Cheryl. And, I was just kind of resistant to the idea. And I was just like, that's not really my personality. But, then we walked to the Second Amendment rally, and I got to hear a whole bunch of speeches. I actually cried for a few of them from just being pretty emotional about, some of the stories that I heard. And then afterwards, we spent the rest of the day at different places with the advocates from the rally. We had dinner with them. We had drinks with them afterwards. And by the end of the night, I just remember Carrie took me by the shoulders and said, "You need to do this." And I remember just being like, yeah, I'll think about it. The next day we were touring around Washington, D.C., and we went to see the Bill of Rights. And I always equate that moment, seeing the Bill of Rights fading away in that rotunda, as almost a religious experience. And I remember that was the moment that I made up my mind, and I just kind of kicked myself in the butt and said, yeah, I got to do this too. So, I feel like there's a lot of great voices out there, but there wasn't too many female Hispanics that were pretty vocal. And sometimes there just is something where you see someone who looks like you or sounds like you or has your background, and it just kind of like inspires you to do the same thing. Or, seeing my inspiration from the other ladies who I had spoken to, that's what got me inspired. So I decided to pay it forward and work towards that as well. John, you had a question?
I did. I understand that in your podcast you reach out to the entire Hispanic American community, but the Hispanic community has roots in a number of countries with very different cultural traditions. How do you guys address this in your podcasts when you're talking about the right to keep and bear arms?
That's actually a great question that we've talked about, because unlike the Black or African American communities that kind of have a solidarity, the Latin American communities do have many different roots. And we talked about this with Edgar Antillon as well, how he identifies as Mexican versus Latin American or Hispanic. But we do have, a culture similarities, language similarities. And, I personally try to address a lot of the Latin American issues, Venezuela, Cuba, socialism, Bolivia are also going through those things. So I kind of address those things. But we do, kind of try to tie in the Latin American community by, the show is in English, but we do segments in Spanish. And we try to, whether that or in our posts on IG. But yeah, it is a different, obstacle to overcome that other minority groups don't have.
Well, and I think another thing that gives us a different perspective is that Johanna's first generation American, and I'm actually Puerto Rican, so I was American pretty much from birth. My father was in the U.S. Navy for about 25 years. My mom was also born in Puerto Rico, so we never had to worry about citizenship, immigration, or anything like that. So Johanna has that different perspective too, of growing up from a family that they immigrated here, they became citizens. She was born as a first generation citizen, so she has those kinds of, just a little bit more of a spectrum between South American and Caribbean, whereas I have the Puerto Rican, perspective. And it's also unique because Puerto Rico, even though it's part of the United States, being a commonwealth, it's not even like a territory. It's kind of its own semi-autonomous region where sometimes, even though we are U.S. citizens, the Constitution doesn't necessarily always apply the way that it should. Of course, that happens everywhere, and even the in the lower 48 and the other states. So that's not necessarily a surprise, but that kind of gives us a unique perspective, and it's something that we've been working on. Living in South Florida, we're exposed to pretty much every Latin American subculture. So we pretty much know everybody, and we can bring our perspective, and it's not really that much of an issue. I think down here it's pretty diverse. So
we're starting to get comments in from the Facebook live feed. Charlie Chambers said, can the guest Facebook and or website be linked for a share to others? And so I'm going to give that as an opportunity for the two of you to go ahead and plug the pod. Talk a little bit, of course, about the podcast, but plug the podcast, and if the people can interact through Facebook or through YouTube, or how they interact with the podcast.
Sure. We're on social media. I'm Puerto Rican Pistolero, so that's all together. Joe is Latina Locked N, the letter N loaded, again, all together. And those, we pretty much use that for all of our social media. So Twitter, Parlay. We're not really that big on Facebook just because we've kind of fought off. That's the one social media network that we have like this moral battle against, but we're probably going to have to cave because you have to be everywhere in order to fight the battle, even if you don't want to be.
I do have a Facebook open. I think there's like 3 posts on it. I promise I'm working on it. I just hate Facebook that much.
But you can find us at Locked and Loaded, the Locked and Loaded Latinos podcast on YouTube. That's live every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, usually for 1 to 2 hours, depending on if we have a guest on. We usually run the show longer, and it's posted on Spotify, iTunes, and all the major podcast platforms after that. And then people can always, we have our email on our YouTube page, and we always encourage people to DM us, especially if they have, perspectives or stories that they want to talk about, their own personal experiences. That's probably the next thing that we really want to work on. We've seen a lot of different minority gun communities kind of show off like this is our range day with us. And so even though we do focus on, I'd say we focus on the millennial and Hispanic communities, just because we're in that age group. And we try to try different things in like that. Like we try to bring in not just Latin culture, but video game culture and things like that. Anything that can bring in kind of our generation and bridge the gap between, non-gun normal citizens who aren't into guns, and obviously gun enthusiasts and, people that may just own guns for self-defense and aren't necessarily legally active when it comes to their rights. So.
And I would like to say, if you watch the show live on Sundays, we have a very interactive chat. To bring back John's comment, we do have a lot of people who are followers of our program who are Mexican or different, Puerto Rican. We talk. It's not just for Latinos. We have a lot of people from other races as well. But it is, I think, refreshing for some people to hear someone that sounds like them or has a similar background. And we always have a segment where I struggle through in Spanish, which I say struggle through. Spanish is my first language, but some of the verbiage from the Constitution is very old worldly and not very used in modern Spanish. So it's always fun.
And one thing I've noticed, I've been going to Gun Rights Policy Conference. This would, if we were to have met in advocacy for Second Amendment for a while. And one thing I've noticed is there's a lot of guys that look like me, old, bald, white guys. And I'm really glad to see young people getting involved and reaching out to other young people and saying, hey, this is actually really cool. This is what we stand for, and we believe in you, not necessarily the state.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And that's kind of the positive feedback, and that's kind of what was encouraging for us, because I guess people find us pretty, to use the term, disarming. So when a lot of people meet us and we first, we try to be slick and we try to bring in gun ownership or like, hey, we're into shooting and things like that, if we think we can kind of edge it in there and throw the seeds in. And typically we really haven't run into any negative feedback in that approach, but people are always surprised, like, you guys own guns? Like, but you guys are so nice. And I was like, what does that have to do with owning guns? I was like, being an a-hole or being a nice person has nothing to do with whether you own guns or not. That's a spectrum that can exist no matter who you are. So that usually brings people in, because they're like, well, you guys you're not like, you don't go hunting, or you're not like ex-military, or you're not some crazy people like, it's crazy that you own guns. And it's like, oh yeah, we don't just own guns, we own several, and we own AR-15s too, and all things like that. And they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. And so that really like blows people's minds, and it's pretty positive, and that usually gives us a good in, because they're like, you know what, we've known these guys for years, they've never done anything wrong, so I guess it's not what we thought. And then that's how you start bridging the gap of, hey, let's go to the range. Then, usually I haven't met anybody that the first time that they shoot a gun that they don't have a smile on their face. So then after that, you work them from the 22s, and then by the end of the day, they're shooting AR-15s like it's nothing, and you're having a good time. So
I'm even crazier. I have approach. I don't know why. Again, I'm an introvert, but I've really gotten into talking to complete strangers about guns, and I just have a knack for it. Like, I kind of have a sense of who I can, have a conversation with. So, at this point, it's just like a hobby of mine. So I meet people in the bank, I might start talking to them, and before you know it, we're having a conversation about guns. Or people I meet along the way in the field. I work in healthcare, so a lot of my patients sometimes, I have feelers, and I put little freedom seeds out there. And then they see me the next time and they're like, so yeah, and we continue the conversation. So it's been, definitely out of my comfort zone, but sometimes you really just need to push yourself and do things outside your comfort zone just for the sake of, everyone's freedom.
Absolutely. Now, I was looking today.
Amy
You guys,
your family.
Go
Amy
ahead,
said that
I'm
your
sorry.
family was kind of anti-gun, Joanna. So, how did that conversation go when you guys first got together?
Funny you should say that. We actually have a family chat. The younger members of my family and I, my siblings and their spouses, had a huge fight about it today on our family chat. It's unresolved, clearly. It's we agreed to disagree. Let's leave it at that. But yes, it is a contentious issue in our family. And it's actually really surprising to me because my siblings are all highly educated people. Most of my family members are doctors, actually. But I just can't seem to break through that. No matter how many statistics I throw at them, one of my siblings actually said, "Well, if someone breaks into my house, well, I guess I'm just gonna die then." And I'm like, "What? You're just giving up." So it's a fight that I don't think I'm going to win, and they're not going to win with me. So we've just, left things. She actually went shooting, and she's now a gun owner. So that was a huge win for us. But most of my siblings, no, that's not happening.
all right, we are coming up.
To
Go
when
ahead.
you guys first met. How was it when Rose?
I've always been open to it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now I made the cardinal. Some people would call it the cardinal mistake of you. There's two things that you should never do when you take a woman shooting for the first time. And that's you never let her shoot a .357 Magnum revolver or a .45. Well, I didn't have a .357 at the time, but a .45 is what I owned. So the good thing is that's all she knew. So she was like, "This is great." So I was like, "Well, if she's cool with a .45, she's gonna be cool with anything." So she's good to go.
There you go. We are up on break again. I want to invite you guys. It's going to be totally up to you. If you want to hang out for the rest of the show, and we've got news, we've got DGUs we're going to be talking about. You want to hang out, that's cool. If you guys have other things you want to do, that's fine too. But I want to thank you both for joining us tonight.
Hey, thank you. No problem.
Thank you.
So
really appreciate it. We can stick around if you want. Yeah.
All right.
I think you guys were talking about some of the things that we actually spoke about yesterday on our show. So
very cool. We are going to go ahead and step aside to break then, folks. When we come back, we've got our news segment coming up, including a really bad story coming out of L.A., but we've got to talk about it. So we'll be back with that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
Okay, and we're back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Moving over to show notes here, and I do want to remind everybody, if you comment on the live video, either on YouTube or on Facebook, when we get that comment, we'll pop it on the screen, and you can be part of the show as well. Let's talk about news to start with. And I'm not going to be reading off show notes here, but I'm just going to pop off my head from memory what I know on, I believe it was on Saturday evening, Sunday morning. There was a gunman that walked up to a patrol car with two LA County deputies in it, opened fire and walked away. And they were, as of this morning, still fighting for their lives. I understand one of them at least has been moved to a stable condition. And God bless both of the deputies. Despite being shot in the jaw, the female deputy was able to get on the radio, call for help, and get back in the fight. The suspect has not been arrested. Apparently, from what I know, it's a known person, just now in hiding and being protected by, the best way I can put it is a bunch of miscreants. Anybody, in my opinion only, I'm not speaking for anybody else on my show. Anybody that helps this person needs to spend a long time in prison. And this person, in my opinion only, it's on video, folks. There's no guilt or possible, there's no doubt about guilt. If that person doesn't make it into a jail cell because they assume the room temperature challenge, I will not cry about it. And I'm against the death penalty. I'm going to go ahead and open this up to our guests and my staff and folks. What do you think?
Well, I think that this is an example of how these circumstances get politicized, because it was also in the news segment that Joe Biden came out 24 hours after the attack and pushed for an assault weapon ban and a standard capacity magazine ban. And keep in mind that the gunman used a handgun.
Yes.
President Trump, on the other hand, stated animals that must be hit hard, and he also pushed for a fast trial and tougher criminal sentencing guidelines and faster courts. And it's really such a I don't even have the right words for it, but it's just sad that these things that are happening are being used as political advertisements or as political gains for one side or the other. And I think that, absolutely, kind of similar to what you're saying, Paul, that it was caught on camera. It was a clear-cut murder is what this was.
Yes.
And they need to be charged and processed as such.
I'm actually disturbed by. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I'm
You're the
actually
guest.
disturbed by the reaction of the people of LA. They haven't clearly said whether it was people associated with BLM or Antifa or who, but there was a crowd at the hospital where the two officers are being treated, St. Francis Medical Center in Linwood. And Saturday night, they were actually impeding the entrances and exits of the hospital. And the hospital staff had been tweeting and saying, please don't block the entrances. People couldn't get into the hospital for treatment. Ambulances couldn't get in. I find that extremely disrespectful. And even worse, they were chanting outside that they hoped that the officers die using pretty bad language. So that's, really, really painful to hear that anyone would be advocating for anyone's death.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that same point. The one thing I did see this evening on the news just before we came on, they showed the female deputy actually working to put a tourniquet, even though she was shot in the face, on the other deputy's arm so he wouldn't bleed out. That took a lot. I mean, you've got shot in the face, but yet you've got enough presence of mind that you try to get a tourniquet on your fellow officer. And that was, that was tough.
I know that to kind of add to what Joe was saying, one of the city managers in LA County actually said, the chickens have come home to roost when he was describing the shooting of the two police officers, and that the neighborhood is plagued by deputy gangs. So, pretty much implying that the police are their own gang that runs around and causes violence. So it seems like he is almost implying that this is justifiable. So that's kind of that's the climate that we're in. It's a shame when you see politicians start going against other civil servants that essentially work for them. It's really egregious when you just think about the fact that these are the politicians that pass certain laws, then expect police officers to enforce them whether they're popular or not, and then they just throw the police officers under the bus when something happens to them, and that's pretty. It's pretty upsetting in my opinion.
Well, Linwood Councilman Salvatore Alatorre is making a motion to get that city manager dismissed. So his comments are going to come home to roost in that he's going to be walking the unemployment line soon, hopefully.
Yeah, one could hope. Another one of the stories that, and there's two here that are really related, but Georgia officials identify 1,000 cases of double voting in the primary. 150,000 voters who requested absentee ballots for the June primary and later showed up to vote in person. 1,000 actually cast 2 ballots in the primary. And then just the story right below it, and thank you, Dana, for getting these so close together. So I noticed it. Roughly 500,000 absentee ballot applications were returned between May and August for reasons that included the individuals have since died or moved, but any outdated names cannot be removed from voter rolls until after the November 3rd election. That's according to Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's office. That just holy crap. It's President, and I'm not a major President Trump fan. He's the best option we've got right now. But I got to agree with him on this. Mail-in voting, there is just so many opportunities for rampant fraud that, it's scary to me.
Well, I got to say here in North Carolina, I was going to say that my mom was still registered to vote or on the voter rolls for at least 2 years after she died, and she had been in a nursing home for 4 years before that in another county. And I had to actually move to get her off the voter rolls.
I know in South Dakota, if you vote, you can register to vote if you vote in a presidential election, whether you vote for a particular candidate for president or not. You stay on the rolls for 4 years. If you do not vote in the next presidential election, then you're purged. But, I could easily see somebody, Uncle Hank's gone, but not forgotten.
Well, the Michigan one, well, that's where I reside, and we had people who got the absentee voter requests or applications because they sent one out to every registered voter in the state of Michigan for the presidential primary, I believe it was, and there were people who hadn't lived at a residence in over 20 years, and they got those applications. So tells you that for 20 years they have not cleaned up the rolls.
Absolutely. There's one more I want to get to in news, and we're already coming up on the end of the segment. But the Third Circuit Court of Appeals rules that opposite of the Ninth Circuit and rules that New Jersey's capacity limit as unconstitutional. Why that's important, that sets up a disagreement.
As constitutional, not unconstitutional.
Right. Oh, wait. No, wait.
Oh, you said un. Just checking.
I did. Okay. Then, well, either way. Yeah, okay. You're right. I did. I'm sorry. But it sets up a disagreement among the circuits and brings the ability of that to go to the Supreme Court. If the Ninth rules one way, the Third rules the other way, then the option goes to go to the Supreme Court, and they can hear it or not. But that leaves the option there. let's see. Anything else in the news we really want to talk about before we head off to break and get to DGUs?
Second, I think the margin of victory in the 2000 election between Gore and Bush was something only like 1,000 votes. So already seeing
less than that.
Yeah, so even seeing what you saw in that primary in Georgia just shows you that could flip an election right there without any issue. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
When I was researching my talk, when I was asked to speak at Gun Rights Policy Conference 3 or 4 years ago, I was researching, and the total number of votes in Florida, and Florida swung that election, the Bush-Gore election. The total amount of votes in Florida that decided it were 460. You could fit if you could have flown a plane, a 747 in with registered voters and had them vote, that could have swung the election for Gore.
Yep.
It was that close. In a state of many millions, it was 460 votes.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and do this. We are going to step aside to break because we're a little after the top of the hour, and we've got a DGU segment, and I really want to get this show in under 90 minutes, folks. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get to our DGU segment right after we hear about this from our good friend Gary's company. Hang on.
Firearm Safety Institute is one of Northwest Illinois' premier firearm training companies. They provide superior firearm training to all levels of shooters. Gary Doherty has been a trainer and concealed weapons permit holder for many years. While living in Nevada, he carried legally and has the experience to train you to do the same. Firearms Safety Institute offers a wide range of courses designed to meet the personal needs of both seasoned shooters and those that are new to the world of firearms. If you are looking to apply for the Illinois Concealed Carry License, Firearms Safety Institute can provide you with the professional training that meets the state's requirements. Gary accommodates classes of all sizes and can provide individualized instruction if that is your personal preference. He's happy to work with you and your friends to arrange private classes and will come to your location and work around your schedule. If you would like to get your Illinois CCW or increase your firearm knowledge or skills, go to firearmsafetyinstitute.com to start the conversation. Mention the Polite Society podcast and receive a 10% discount on your training. Remember, that's firearmsafetyinstitute.com. Get your Illinois CCW today.
Hey, and we are back. This is the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our DGU segment, and as always, these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. We don't have these assigned, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it on the fly. John, I'm going to give you the first one. Gary, I'm going to give you the second one, and I've got some work behind the scenes to do here for about 30 seconds. So go ahead and talk about our first one, John.
Well, our first one comes from Palo, Iowa. Jordan Schulte heard glass breaking in his child's bedroom. Then a flower pot went crashing through a glass pane in the front door. Schulte, wanting to defend those he loved, arms himself with his 9mm pistol and went to investigate. It was 3 a.m. in the morning. When he was threatened by the intruder, Mr. Schulte fired just one shot. Sheriff's deputies and paramedics found the intruder in the home's entryway. They tried to revive him, but he died there in the doorway he broke in through. Court records show the decedent had a long criminal record and had spent time in prison. He was facing a felony domestic abuse assault charge at the time of his demise and had been charged repeatedly with violating a protective order in the case. Just before this, he drove in the car he was driving ran into a Ford F-150 truck parked on the grass near a nearby intersection. Then neighbors started calling to report that a man was trying to break into their house. Home video surveillance showed the suspect approach the door of one home, then move on down the road. Then another home surveillance system spotted him again. He broke the windows out near the front door, but fled when the homeowner confronted him over the intercom system. 2 more residents called to report attempted break-ins. And then there was the call from a woman who reported that her husband, Jordan Schulte, had shot the intruder. There's the usual sheriff's office statement about investigating, forwarding for review. That ended the story. Amy?
Well, I was going to say this story, this reminds me of a topic that's usually addressed in training classes that I've given. And I'm sure, for anyone that has done classes, you can relate. But I always get asked, if I hear someone break into my home, what should I do? Do I grab a gun and investigate? And a lot of times, you'll hear trainers say, stay put where you are. And depending on what state you live in, how the use of force laws apply in your state, it might be that if you go out and try to, in a sense, find the noise, find the intruder, it could be looked at that you you put yourself in that situation. But in a case where you have other people in the household that you're responsible for their safety, like children, of course you're going to go investigate. And this shows, an example of how this might be different if, let's say, it wasn't a child's bedroom and you just walked out and found the intruder, and now you put yourself in a situation where you have to use deadly force. So in my opinion, what happened here was a justified action on his part.
Well, given the time of the night, it also gives why you want to have a flashlight available. A good flashlight. Yeah, I've recently put one on my home defense shotgun. That's 400 lumens. It'd probably blind somebody before. I mean, that might just stop them. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Johanna, Rolando, you guys want to chime in on this? Oh, I don't have, for some reason, I see lips moving, but I don't have audio. 1 second.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward from, the things that we've been taught in the few classes that we've taken. Obviously Florida here is Castle Doctrine is in effect in Florida. So pretty much once somebody breaks through that threshold, it's all bets are off. Obviously you want to stay wherever's tactically sound, but once they've broken into your home and you have people that are in danger, it's pretty clear cut that you can use self-defense. So, and we always we have flashlights on our firearms as well, for circumstances like that. And we also have free open flashlights, just loose that are, I think ours is like 500 lumens too. So those can definitely stun somebody for a second while you get yourself together.
I am a big fan, and Gary and I may disagree on this, but I am a big fan of weapon-mounted lights. There are those in the training community that say, never point at your weapon at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy. And that is true, but I am a big fan. I mean, if you got a powerful light on the end of your weapon, even if you're at low ready, you're going to be illuminating a wide arc in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you only have use of one hand.
Yeah, exactly.
If you only have use of one hand, that's where the weapon-mounted light would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we know how difficult it is for people to train as it is. People barely dry fire practice as it is. So to then expect them to try to manipulate, because I've seen a lot of videos of police officers in first person where they try to, sometimes their open-handed skills aren't where they should be. And you'll see that they struggle to hold their loose flashlight while also holding their firearm at the same time, and they don't get a good purchase, and they'll limp wrist their firearm. And then you see other officers that have better technique that have obviously practiced, manipulating that firearm with one hand while still holding a flashlight. But, obviously if you've got a weapon mounted light, that lets you put everything into holding that firearm properly.
Yeah, I have to disagree with Amy just a tiny bit. If there's kids in the house or other loved ones, I would not leave them to go investigate. I would stay with them so that I could defend them if somebody came through the door that we were all in together. I would have the family plan to get together in one room and stay there, get on the phone to the police, and not investigate.
I'm gonna throw a scenario at you, Gary, and I'm agreeing with you, but I'm gonna throw a scenario at you. A 3-bedroom house and kids' bedrooms upstairs. 2 bedrooms for kids upstairs. My bedroom's downstairs. I hear glass break. I'm going to the kids' room, and if that means going through where the glass break is happening, so be it. But my intent is going to be to get to the kids and defend the kids.
That's right. That's what I said. Is get everybody together in one place and defend them from there, not go investigate. Yeah, if you have to walk through the area where you think there was broken glass, of course you're going to have to do that.
Right.
You want to be able to get to the family and be able to protect them.
Absolutely. All right.
I mean, I've told the story in the show before, the exact thing. Before my first Mag 40, and then I brought the story to Mossad Ayub, and he went, "Yeah, that was the wrong thing." And so that's the way I teach it in my classes.
Yeah.
Don't go hunting in your house. Get everybody together. Have a plan.
Absolutely. All right, Gary, let's go ahead and let's hit the next one then, man.
Santa Clarita, California, around 2 p.m., deputies were called about a possible burglary. The victim was elderly and called 911 to say that an adult male was knocking and trying to get in her home. She did not know who he was. Moments later, the suspect gained entry into her home. She locked herself in her room, and the suspect then forced that door open. The victim had a firearm and told the intruder to leave. After the suspect exited the house, the woman fired one shot in the air and told the suspect to get on the ground. He was obedient and laying on the ground when deputies arrived. He was arrested on felony burglary charges and held on $50,000 bail.
Oh, I got to jump in on this one. And long-time
I think all of us
listeners,
want to.
long-time listeners to the show, long-time viewers, pretty much know what I'm going to say. You have a handgun that has between 7 and it's got between 5 and 8 rounds in a cylinder. When you fire a warning shot, you're saying, not only do I not want to, I'm not willing to use deadly force, you're saying that I'm so confident that this isn't a deadly force situation that I'm going to blatantly risk other people by firing a round, and I'm going to get rid of one of the between 5 and 17 rounds I got because I really don't think I'm going to need them. Bad decision if you ever decide to fire a warning shot. Your only warning shot you should ever fire is to fire a shot to center mass to warn the other bad guys that are breaking into your house that you mean business about this.
And why would we fire a shot in the direction of a suspect if they're leaving?
Exactly.
Even if it's in the air, why? They're gone.
Well, it's
And
another.
for those of us-
I can't stress that.
Go ahead, Amy.
I just can't stress that enough. That like you said, Paul, and that was the perfect way to put it. If you fire a warning shot, you're basically declaring, at this time that I fired the shot, I'm not under duress. I'm not under duress of loss of life or serious bodily harm because I had the time to do that. So you're basically saying, okay, especially when use of force laws apply, under the stipulation that it's because at that time that you fired the shot, you felt your life was in danger, and that clearly proves you're not.
Dana, you started to come back with something, and I cut you off.
It's no problem. I was going to say, for those of us that are frugal and with the current price of ammunition,
Who can't afford a warning shot? Who was it?
I think
who
there's
was it
something
that said that you should?
like that.
Who was it that said you should fire a warning shot? I believe it's one of our presidential candidates, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
That you
yes.
should
Oh,
use a
yeah.
double barrel shotgun and fire a warning shot, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
think
want
it
to
was
name
double.
any names, but
That's right.
Yeah, well, we're gonna. Yeah. I do not happen to agree with that particular presidential candidate. We'll leave it there. Any more comments on this DGU? I'm kind of glad an elderly lady kept a handgun in her home. I don't like her using a warning shot, but I do like the fact that she's got a handgun in the home. And
I like what state was this in again?
California.
Well, I'm surprised that I'm glad that she basically didn't get any legal action for doing that, because you'd be surprised with some of these DAs how they are, especially in non-free states, that they would just go after her just for G's and Q's.
And also, since it's California, you know that she didn't have many rounds in that gun at all.
Yeah, no matter what she had.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. I think we're gonna go ahead and set the defensive gun use segment aside there. We've got one more break, and we're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about blog posts and listener feedback, and then we're gonna shut the show down. We'll be back with our final segment right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Hey, and we're back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Rob is not here tonight, and if you are following him on social media, you know that his wonderful internet service provider refuses to give him a timetable of when he may get internet back. So I'm just going to go ahead and recommend that you go to his blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com, and read some of his past stuff. I promise you, when he's able, he's going to have a lot of stuff to post. But go ahead and check that blog out. John, what have you been doing over at your blog? No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money, man.
Well, just like in 2016, this election is about more than just the presidency. It is about the Supreme Court. We saw how Chief Justice John Roberts waffled on the many 2A cases that came before the court this session, and they should have been heard. Now imagine if President Trump got to select one or more justices to the court. Both Justices Breyer and Ginsburg are in their 80s, so it's only a matter of time before their spots open. Knowing this, President Trump released a list this past Wednesday with more names to be added to the candidate pool. It had some great Second Amendment advocates on the list, like Senator Ted Cruz, Paul Clement, and Judge James Ho of Texas. Just like my wife told friends in 2016, you were voting for the Supreme Court. It was true then, and is true today. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
Okay. Before we take off, I do want to remind everybody, we do have a listeners group on Facebook. If you're a member of Facebook, just search for Polite Society Podcast Listeners. That thing has been growing by leaps and bounds. I wish I had more time to spend in there than I do, but there's a lot of great discussion in there. Our DGUs often we come from stories that get posted in there, and occasionally news stories that get posted there make it to the show as well. But it's a place where a lot of fans of the show get to hang out and discuss things, and it's actually really cool. So that does wrap it up of another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Rolando de la Vega and Johanna Rosley for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Gary, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, that is the end of the recording.